I remember the day I first met her, April 12th, 1939. Cherry blossoms drifted through the air like gentle snow, settling on the shoulders of her indigo school uniform. Yumiko had just turned 7, and I was her birthday present, a porcelain doll with painted blue eyes and a red silk kimono, nestled in a wooden box lined with rice paper. Her grandfather had saved for months to buy me from an artisan who crafted dolls in the traditional style, with hand-painted features and real human hair. "This is Aiko," her grandfather said, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he presented me to her. "She will be your companion through all your years." Yumiko's eyes widened, dark pools of wonder as she lifted me from my box. Her small fingers were gentle, reverent even, as they traced the pattern on my kimono. "She's beautiful," she whispered. I felt the warmth of her hands, the quickening of her heartbeat as she held me close. In that moment, I became more than porcelain and paint. I became the keeper of a child's joy. Our home was modest but filled with light, a traditional wooden house in the eastern part of Hiroshima, where the Motoyasu River curved through the city like a silver ribbon. Through the paper walls, I could hear the sounds of life. Yumiko's mother preparing rice in the kitchen, her father reading aloud from the newspaper, discussing faraway wars that seemed impossible to touch us here. Each night, Yumiko would place me on the small shelf beside her futon, positioning me so I could watch over her as she slept. "You see everything, don't you, Aiko?" she would whisper in the darkness. "You remember everything." And I did. I remembered how she would practice her calligraphy, her small hand guiding the brush with growing confidence. I remembered how she would sing as she dressed for school, her voice clear as a temple bell in the morning light. But I also witnessed the slow changes, the rationing of rice, the blackout curtains, the absence of her father who was called to serve the emperor. I watched Yumiko grow quieter, more serious, as war tightened its grip on Japan. Still, children find ways to remain children. She would still take me from my shelf, whispering secrets, dreams of peace, of her father's return, of a future where cherry blossoms could fall without the shadow of bombs. By the summer of 1945, I had become her most trusted confidant. Each morning, she would tuck me carefully into her small cloth backpack before heading to school, unwilling to leave me behind as air raid sirens became more frequent. "You're my good luck charm," she told me. "As long as you're with me, nothing bad can happen." If only porcelain could weep. August 6, 1945. The morning broke with remarkable clarity. Through the opening of Yumiko's backpack, I could glimpse patches of a sky so intensely blue it seemed almost unnatural. Hiroshima was stirring to life beneath that perfect sky. Women preparing breakfast over precious little fuel. Elderly men tending to vegetable gardens grown in once decorative yards. Children preparing for another day of school or factory. Work, Yumiko had just turned 13, no longer the small child who had first held me in her hands. War had thinned her face, but her eyes remained kind. That morning, she had dressed especially carefully in her school uniform, smoothing the wrinkles with hands that had grown accustomed to work. Her mother had managed to find a small sweet potato for her breakfast, a rare treat in those lean times. "Be careful today," her mother said, the worry lines around her eyes deepening as she adjusted Yumiko's collar. News had reached them of other cities devastated by American bombs. Osaka, Tokyo, Kobe. Each day brought new anxiety that Hiroshima might be next. "I will, Mother," Yumiko promised, slipping me into her backpack alongside her books and the small lunch of rice balls wrapped in bamboo leaves. I felt the familiar rhythm of her walk as we left the house, heard her soft good morning to the elderly neighbor who was already sweeping the street in front of his home. The air was already warm, promising another sweltering summer day. Yumiko joined a stream of other students making their way toward the school. Many of the older boys were absent, already serving in factories or preparing for what everyone feared would be an American invasion. The war had stolen childhood from an entire generation, but there was still something resilient in the way these children greeted each other, shared small jokes, found moments of normalcy amid the abnormal. At 8:13 a.m., Yumiko paused on the Ayoi Bridge, looking down at the water of the Otter River. From my place in her backpack, I could see her reflection wavering in the current. She was thinking of her father, I knew. He had always loved this bridge. For just a moment, she reached back and touched the canvas of her backpack, as if to make sure I was still there. "Just one more year," she whispered, a promise to herself that the war couldn't last forever. At 8:15 a.m., the world ended. From inside the backpack, I felt it first as a pressure, a force so powerful it seemed to compress the very air around us. Then came the light, not the gentle morning sunlight, but a flash more brilliant than 1,000 suns, piercing even the thick canvas of the backpack. The heat followed, a wall of fire that swept through the city faster than a heartbeat. The last sound I heard from Yumiko was not a scream, but a single, startled gasp. I don't know how long I lay there, half buried in debris, one side of my porcelain. Face melted and blackened by heat, no human creation was meant to endure. Time seemed to have fractured along with the city. Where there had been buildings, there were now twisted skeletons. Where there had been streets filled with people, there was now ash. The Ayoi Bridge, where Yumiko had stood moments before, was a distorted shadow of itself, the metal railings bent like paper. The backpack had partially shielded me, a small pocket of preservation amid total destruction. Of Yumiko, I found no trace. The blast had come from above, they would later say. A single bomb dropped from a plane named for the pilot's mother, Enola Gay, such a gentle name for something that could unmake a world. Days passed. Survivors moved through the wasteland like ghosts, their skin hanging in strips, calling out names that received no answer. Rain fell, black rain, contaminated with radiation and ash, coating everything with a slick, dark residue. Some who had survived the initial blast began to sicken mysteriously, their hair falling out, their bodies betraying them in new and terrifying ways. On the third day, a rescue worker found me. His face was masked, his hands gloved as he picked through the rubble, searching for survivors or identifying the dead. I must have been a strange sight, a doll's face peering out from the remains of a child's backpack. He hesitated, then gently pulled me free. "Another one," he said to his companion. His voice was hollow with exhaustion. "For the collection." I learned later that they had begun gathering personal items found in the ruins. Watches stopped at 8:15, melted eyeglasses, carbonized lunchboxes, and dolls like me. Silent witnesses to what they were already calling the Picadon, the flash boom that had erased a city. The worker placed me in a box with other recovered items. Through the long months that followed, I watched as Hiroshima struggled to comprehend what had happened, to rebuild from nothing. I saw the survivors, the hibakusha, fighting both visible and invisible wounds. Some mothers came to the collection of found items, hoping to recognize something that had belonged to their children. They would hold objects like me with trembling hands, searching for confirmation of loss, for some tangible connection to those who had vanished in the flash. One woman held me for a long time, her fingers tracing the undamaged side of my face. "My daughter had a doll," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "but it wasn't this one." She set me down carefully as if afraid to cause me pain, and moved on to the next box of recovered items. I waited for Yumiko's mother to come. She never did. I learned later that their home, just a mile from the hypocenter, had been completely destroyed. There were no survivors from that neighborhood. By December 1945, as the first winter after the bombs settled over the skeletal remains of the city, I found myself placed in a makeshift museum, a collection of artifacts that would eventually become part of the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. 77 years have passed since the morning the sky burned. I remain behind glass now, one half of my face perfectly preserved, rosy cheeks, blue eyes, delicate lashes. The other half a grotesque mask, melted and blackened by a heat that reached the temperature of the sun's surface for one brief, catastrophic moment. Visitors come from all over the world to see me and the other relics of that August morning. They press their hands against the glass, their breath fogging the surface as they lean close to examine the details of destruction. Children, not much older than Yumiko was, stare at me with wide, uncomprehending eyes. Parents pull them closer, protective arms around small shoulders, as if to shield them from the knowledge that such things have happened, could happen again. I have become more than a doll, more than a toy. I'm evidence, testimony, warning. My damaged face tells a story that human words struggle to capture. The story of a morning when humanity crossed a threshold and gained the power to destroy itself entirely. Sometimes late at night, when the museum is empty, I imagine I can still feel the weight of Yumiko's hands lifting me from my shelf, still hear her voice whispering secrets and dreams in the darkness. I wonder what she would have become in a world where August 6, 1945 had been just another summer day. A teacher, perhaps, or a mother with daughters of her own. She was good at calligraphy. Might she have become an artist? Would she have grown old, her hands becoming weathered like her grandfather's as she passed down stories to a new generation? Instead, she became smoke, atoms scattered across a poisoned sky. One of 140,000 stories ended in an instant or in the agonizing weeks and years that followed. Her name appears on a memorial register in the Peace Park, one among thousands, but it is through me that some fragment of her persists. The child who believed a porcelain doll could keep her safe from harm. I am the silent guardian of not just Yumiko's stolen future, but of all the children of Hiroshima whose voices were silenced on that clear August morning. I bear witness so that others might understand the true cost of war, the fragility of human bodies against the weapons humans create. Look at my face, both the unmarred innocence and the melted horror, and see the choice that lies before humanity. I cannot speak, but if I could, I would tell you this. I have seen what happens when the sun is pulled down from the sky. I have felt the moment when a city becomes a cemetery in the space between heartbeats. And I am still here, watching, remembering, waiting to see what you will do with the terrible knowledge and power you possess. The most precious things are the most easily broken. This is the lesson written on my porcelain face, a truth as old as humanity itself, yet one we must learn again and again. I am the silent doll who guarded Hiroshima's stolen childhood, and my vigil continues.